Here's a little truth bomb. Most of the things keeping you stuck in your life and on this realignment journey are things that you're not actually consciously aware of. They're those subconscious limiting beliefs that are below your conscious awareness that are actually holding you back. Welcome back to week 3 of this Return to Wholeness 100 Days of Realignment. This week, we're going to be talking all about belief systems. And this is such an important part of this realignment journey because our belief systems, our core stories, and our subconscious programming are the parts that many of us are not consciously aware of. And that is the 95%. The conscious awareness is only the 5%. And so all of these things that are holding us back, most likely we are not even aware that they are the things that are running in the background. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about this. Our core limiting stories and our belief systems are embedded with us when we're very young. So, under the age of 7, we're basically sponges. And that's because our brain waves are in a lower state. And so we are just downloading information around us from our parents, from our peers, from our communities, from society at large. And we don't even realize this is happening. But that is what sets the stage to shape us all the way through our adult life, unless we become aware of this programming and work to actively change it. And the belief system is a big part of this because so many of us believe certain things consciously, but subconsciously we have contradictory limiting beliefs that are keeping us from reaching our highest potential. And as we work towards realignment, it's very important for us to become aware of these core limiting beliefs and stories. Now, one of the easiest ways to identify some of these beliefs is just to become aware in your life whenever you feel reactive to something. It can be any kind of reaction, really, but it's usually one that feels something that happens that makes you feel a certain way. And in that is such valuable feedback and information because we can become aware of the automatic stories and meaning that we are assigning to the circumstances in our lives. And that is the programming that is running. And so many of us can see these patterns in our lives because a lot of the times we have these repetitive things that are happening again and again and again, and we don't understand why we can't seem to break out of these patterns. And the reason is because we have these core limiting beliefs and stories. And so becoming aware of this programming is so very important. Now, there's so much information out there on the internet around this, um, and there's lots of different ways you can look at this. But the most important thing is to just really to become aware and to start noticing whenever you're having a reaction to something or you're feeling a certain way about it, or when you start immediately telling an internal story, meaning something will happen and then this dialogue in your head starts running and immediately assigning a meaning to some circumstance in your life, whether that you're always broke or that people always undervalue you or you never have enough time, or I mean, these are all the stories in our lives. And so it can really be about anything. But in order to keep this focused on our journey, our 100 days of alignment, we want to look at one area of our lives where we feel in some way stuck, or we feel like there's this kind of habitual patterning that's happening, or just something that's really frustrating for us that we do know that we want to shift in our lives. And we just want to start being aware of what happens in our body and then the story and meaning that we start giving it once we get triggered by something around this specific subject or area in our lives. And so this week is all about starting to actually notice what core stories or limiting beliefs we have in our lives. And so I'm going to be taking this on. I already know what area of my life I'm going to be looking at because it has to do with my career, and it's something that I've been working on and bumping up against. And so I'm very aware of what the core stories and limiting beliefs are. The thing is that working to shift them, because it's in those moments when we do have an activation, that's where we have to create the space and have that pause to be able to choose differently. Meaning, like, if we react the way we always have, we will continue to get the same result that we have always gotten. And so we have to learn how to create that space there and be able to kind of see what's happening for us and choose differently. And for me, that's where, like I said, I know that's where the work is. And so I'm going to invite all of you this week to take on this very same task where we just want to start noticing where we feel triggered, where we feel reactive, where we start telling these habituated stories. And then we're going to try and create some space and not become reactive and react in the way we always have in the past, telling the stories that we always have in the past. And then we're going to come back. I'm going to come back midweek. We're going to check in, and I'm going to give you some more tools on what we do once we've created the space, how we actually work to shift this patterning. Now, the thing I want to mention is that this is really where our relationship to self comes in. We worked in week 1 on disconnecting from distraction and quieting the noise. And then last week, we talked about rebuilding self trust and listening to our intuition and learning to decipher through our internal compass what's fear versus what is actually intuition. And so this week, as we move into the belief work, those two things are also going to become very relevant for us here, because this is all building on each other. And we have to learn to trust ourselves and to know that when a reaction or a trigger is coming up, it's giving us valuable feedback where we still have room for growth, especially if we want to be somewhere else in our lives or we want to be showing up differently in our lives. Okay. So meeting ourselves with kindness and compassion, never judgment or criticism, is so important. But if we do find that that negative internal critic starts coming up, we actually just have to be able to see that as feedback as well. So we're just always kind of collecting data, if you will, and trying to be more of a neutral observer, because we are really doing a lot of inner exploration. And so we just have to be curious, like, what is going on for me? Because ultimately our intention is to shift and realign with ourselves. And so there's going to be some discomfort in that. There's going to be some growing pains in that. And we just have to understand, just like we do with kids when they're learning a new skill set, we give them grace. We know that they're probably going to have to try and fail multiple times in order to become proficient. And that's exactly the mentality we want to take here, because we're learning a new skill set and we're trying to identify these patterns, these limiting beliefs. We're learning to rebuild that trust in self. And so we just have to try and fail and try and fail, because failure is one of those things where it's actually just continuing to show up and try again. And the more we try, the better we get. So I will be back on Wednesday. Take good care, everybody. Good luck, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.